My name is Edgar James, CPA. I'm talking to you today with a friend of mine, Black Sparx, the producer, where we're interested in going into some issues surrounding the plight of black people today. All types of black people, as you're going to see as we speak. We're not going to be distinguishing between the origin of where you came from, for example. If you're from South America, Central America, North America, Europe, wherever you're from, Africa, if you're black, we're talking about you. So we're looking at the impact of slavery, absence of our knowledge of things prior to slavery. The post-slavery traumatic stress syndrome of black people in America, for lack of my ability to call it something else, I'll use the definition that other people are using for it. Essentially, we're talking about literacy, though, in terms of understanding that plight. So there are a couple of definitions of literacy, and one is the ability to read and write. I think that's the definition most people are most familiar with, so we look at that as the item that we're usually going to be talking about. We're going to talk about that piece also. It's going to be a big part of what we're discussing. We're also going to talk about the second definition of gaining competence or knowledge of certain specified subject matter. That's when one becomes literate. So we're going to be looking at all these things, and particularly how the impact has felt and manifested itself upon black people. First, we're looking at the impact of a lot of different types of black people, given that the origin of each one of them was Africa. Over time, we've come to be represented from a number of other places, other countries, and it creates sometimes nationalism for those who are proud when they came from those places, which is an understandable thing and not unusual. The issue has become one of finding it necessary to unify so that folk who are finding themselves in the United States are able to gain and find comfort and security among themselves. So that's one of the purposes of starting this particular documentary, was to delve into how we can essentially unify and why we haven't, what's been some of the major causes, so that we don't do too much analysis. We're going to eventually come to a workable plan for how to do these things. You're going to see that they center around a couple of items: the ability to understand the written word, the ability to save money, the ability to invest money for a reasonable rate of return on that investment, and how to have fun and live also, how to do charity. One of the major things that's lacking, how to do charity. It's not only done at church, though that's a wonderful place to do it. Charity is done in many places, and there are a lot of ways to do it. Time and talent count. So it isn't always about money, though money helps. We're also going to be delving into why other cultures, people from other countries, for example, can come to the United States, perhaps in your own neighborhood, form a business, go to college, do those things that we expect one to do on the way to prosperity. How do they buy a home? Why do they live among themselves? Why is their culture important to them? We'll be looking at those issues as well. Particularly, we'll be looking into some of the things that have been so eloquently laid out by Dr.Claud Anderson that I don't get to really do them as much justice. But in the interest of getting his point out, and many of them, which you could critique or debate or do whatever you want, to get those points out that have been analyzed with helping us move towards some solution for our current state of affairs, which is poor. That's the interest of our document.
What I'm going to tell you today is very, very important for you. And I want you to understand clearly that black folk in America in a world of trouble. You're in a world of trouble in this country and in the world. And contrary to what you hear, I don't care whether it comes out of a black mouth or a white mouth, anybody that tells you that black folk are progressing in America is lying to you. You're lying to you. And right now, if we don't do some very specific things in America and in Baltimore in the next 3 years, not 200 years from now, but in the next 3 years, you are through in America. You're through. You're going to become a permanent underclass in 3 years. And an underclass means those individuals who, by the nature of their circumstances, will be forced to live as either beggars or criminals. That's where you're going. I'm going to say it to you again in case you missed that. Here in Baltimore and any blacks in America, you got 3 years to get your act together or you're going down. You're going to be forced to be either beggars or criminals for the rest of your existence. You got an unending influx of immigrants coming to this country. They're going to bury you alive. That bill they have right now in Congress, that is your tombstone. They're going to stick that up over your head. And any black person in this city that's shucking and jiving, they better get out of your way so you can get ahead, because bad things are coming. This auditorium should have been full right now with black folk that understand the nature of your circumstances.
Seems that people came, I've noticed at a point, I'm going to speak back and forth, but I'm going to start at a point when people came here in the 1960s from some other countries, particularly Caribbean, South America, Central America. Those people were coming at a time when it was very turbulent in the United States, and more than likely had to live in what's called a black neighborhood or a ghetto or one of these other terms that have been used for what we call home. That was the case, and welcome people actually wanted them here. But the idea was hopefully to multiply the numbers of black people to aid in our struggle for power in the United States. And the best way, in my opinion, for that to have been done would have been in a unified manner as opposed to splintered among different nationalities. So that caused a lot of clash, and many people who had been here for some time had already accepted just a unified black thing. And what now has eventuated is that we're called African Americans today. Before it was Negro. At another time it was Afro-American. We've been black. We've been all the things that other people said we weren't, when all we had to be was African. Now, since we couldn't do that, the legislation and all the things that were about that group of people who were being decimated in the United States, many from the Caribbean. It seems that everyone came from the Caribbean because the slave ships didn't come directly to the United States until they had been to the Caribbean and came here. So it's all one group of people that we're talking about, but splintered into any number of folk. And it's not to the advantage of anyone. So the central theme is unifying in terms of doings and sharing those cultures, while unifying simply around being black people would provide the force that our folks hoped for immediately after slavery. It's just after slavery, the people, per Dr.Claud again, were doing much better than, on a relative scale, than people seem to be doing now. And based on their need for self-reliance, that created a driving force for doing what they had to do for themselves. Had any number of businesses. Figure during slavery, the slaves did all the work. So they had all the crafts and all the trades and all the professions were practiced by them for the white man, and they were done for free. So it didn't make them less skilled, it simply made them not paid, but the skills were the purview of black people, and there was a large number of them with very fine skills. Afterwards now, we've come to the point where we have unions that aren't controlled by black people, and you have a hard time getting a union card. And you have to go back to the origins of why unions were developed, and were they developed to help black people? Essentially, no, they weren't. Hence, you still have a problem getting into one because of the value of being able to provide for yourself, or to control an industry or a business or any of those things. But then we have to ask the question of, well, why did it happen? If they had the prosperity, so to speak, right after slavery, what happened? Well, Jim Crow happened, and there were still slave codes in Virginia and other places that forbid anyone from assisting a black person financially. You couldn't even look out the same window as a white person in some states. So there was a definite holding of the talent of black people because, one, there was a fear that because there were more blacks than whites at the time, that they would simply take over and reverse all those things that had been done to them the prior 400 years. So all these things work themselves together in terms of why is the black man in 2017 in the predicament that he's in.